A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headache.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. What happens when Hollywood tries to make serious art and accidentally create something genuinely unwatchable? I'm not talking about the fun kind of bad either. I am not talking about the movies where you gather your friends, grab some popcorn, and laugh at the strings holding up the flying saucers. I am talking about the soul-crushing, expensive, how did this get past a room full of professionals? Kind of bad.
It is a specific type of tragedy, Corn. It is the wide-release, high-budget disaster that had every intention of winning an Oscar or redefining a genre, but instead, it just redefined our understanding of boredom or narrative incoherence. It's that feeling of watching a train wreck in slow motion, except the train is made of gold and the passengers are all wearing tuxedos. I am Herman Poppleberry, and today we are launching a brand new series we are calling The Countdown. We are starting with a heavy hitter, the 5 worst serious movies of the last 5 years, from 2021 to right now in March of 2026.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, today's prompt from Daniel is what kicked this off. He wanted us to look at the movies that actually tried. So, the rules are simple. No Sharknado clones. No intentionally campy horror. No movies that knew they were trash. These had to be films with pedigree, budget, and a straight face. We are looking at the critical consensus from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and we are going in order of increasing badness. By the time we get to number 1, you might actually feel a bit of physical pain just hearing the plot summary.
It is worth mentioning, too, that today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash. It is helping us parse through the absolute mountain of cinematic failures from the last half-decade to find the ones that truly earn their spot at the bottom of the barrel. It's actually been quite a task because the prestige flop has become its own subgenre lately. Think about the sheer volume of content being pumped out by streaming services and studios trying to capture that prestige, lightning in a bottle. They see a success like The Power of the Dog or Oppenheimer's and they think, okay, we just need long silences, a muted color palette, and a brooding protagonist. But they forget the actual substance.
It is a dirty job, but someone has to do it. So, Herman, before we hit number 5, what is the sincerity threshold for you? Why does a serious failure hurt more than a low-budget flop?
Because a serious failure represents a massive waste of human potential and capital. When you see $80 million or $150 million on screen, and the script feels like it was written by someone who has never met a human being, it creates this weird cognitive dissonance. You are watching talented actors like Oscar winners or seasoned veterans struggling to make sense of lines that are fundamentally broken. It's like watching a master chef try to make a gourmet meal out of sawdust and glue. You can see the technique, but the ingredients are just wrong.
It is like watching a Ferrari being used to plow a field. It is just wrong. You keep waiting for it to do something impressive, but it just keeps digging a deeper hole in the dirt. You're sitting there thinking, I know what this machine is capable of, so why is it covered in mud and moving at 2 miles per hour? It's that gap between the expectation of greatness and the reality of the mess on screen. All right, let us get into it. Starting the countdown at number 5, we have a sci-fi thriller from 2023 called The Last Sentinel.
Oh man, The Last Sentinel. This one had an $80 million budget. It currently sits at a 4.2 on IMDb and a dismal 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you want to subject yourself to it, it is currently on Paramount Plus or you can rent it on Amazon Prime.
$80 million. That is not indie sci-fi money. That is, we expect this to be a franchise money. The premise was actually somewhat interesting on paper, right? A small crew on a lonely outpost in the middle of a flooded Earth, waiting for relief that never comes. It was trying so hard to be the next Blade Runner, or even something like The Martian. Very atmospheric, very tense. It had that last stand of humanity vibe that usually works for me. It taps into that primal fear of isolation. You got 4 people on a platform called Sentinel in the middle of a vast radioactive ocean. The setup is pure gold for a psychological thriller.
The problem is that atmospheric and tense only works if there is a coherent internal logic. The last Sentinel fails because it has plot holes you could drive a literal aircraft carrier through. For example, there is a central twist involving a ship that appears on the horizon. Without giving too much away for the 3 people who actually want to watch this, the reveal completely contradicts everything the characters established about their world and their technology in the first 20 minutes.
But wait, how does that work in practice? If they establish the world is flooded and they are isolated, how does a ship appearing break the logic?
Because they spend the first act telling us that radar is impossible due to the atmospheric interference, and then suddenly they're tracking this ship with pinpoint accuracy using radar. It's like the writers forgot the rules they wrote 10 pages earlier, and it's not just technical stuff. The characters make decisions that defy self-preservation. There's a scene where they realize their oxygen is low, and instead of fixing the leak, they decide to have a philosophical debate about who deserves to breathe. It's infuriating. It's that screenwriter logic where conflict is manufactured by making everyone in the room an idiot for 10 minutes just to fill time.
And the acting. Herman, you mentioned veteran actors earlier. This movie has Kate Bosworth and Thomas Kretschmann. These are people who know how to act. But they are directed with such wooden intensity that it feels like they are reading their lines off a teleprompter located 3 miles away. It is that classic mistake where serious is equated with having no emotions or personality. Do you think the director just told them to act like you've forgotten what joy is before every take?
Well, not exactly, but you hit on a key point. The direction confused brooding with stationary. Compare this to something like Dune from 2021. Villeneuve understands that you could have a serious, slow burn epic, but the characters still need to feel like they have stakes. In The Last Sentinel, the stakes are supposedly the end of the world, but I found myself rooting for the flood just so the movie would end. There's a specific scene where Thomas Kretschmann's character stares at a rusted bolt for 3 full minutes. I think it was supposed to represent the decay of civilization, but it just represented the decay of my patience.
Did you feel like the cinematography helped at all? I mean, with 80 million, surely it looked good.
It looked expensive, but expensive doesn't mean effective. Every shot is color graded to this sickly, desaturated blue-gray. It's supposed to feel cold and damp, which it does, but after 2 hours, you just feel like you need a hot shower and a lamp. It's visually oppressive in a way that doesn't serve the story, it just masks the lack of actual sets. I read a production fun fact that they actually built a massive water tank for the exterior shots, but because the lighting is so dark and the fog is so thick, you could have filmed it in a bathtub and we wouldn't have known the difference.
It is the ultimate, wait, why is this happening? Movie. You keep waiting for a payoff that justifies the 90 minutes of brooding, and when it arrives, it is just a wet thud. It is number 5 because it is technically competent. The cinematography is actually decent, but as a piece of storytelling, it is a hollow shell.
It is a visual effects reel in search of a soul, and that brings us to number 4. This one is going to be controversial for some, but the numbers don't lie. 2024's Legacy of Ashes.
The sequel that nobody, and I mean nobody, asked for.
It is a sequel to a film that came out 8 years prior, which had a middling reception to begin with, but the studio decided that brand recognition was enough to greenlight a 3.8 IMDb rated disaster. It has 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you are a glutton for punishment, it is a Netflix exclusive. It's one of those movies that pops up in your recommended list and you think, wait, did I miss the first one? Do I care? And the answer is almost always no.
This is the poster child for sequel bloat. The original film was a self-contained historical drama about a small-town lawyer in the 1850s. It wrapped up perfectly. But Legacy of Ashes decides to unwrap everything. It introduces a forced romantic subplot between 2 characters who, in the first film, were established as having a strictly platonic mentor-student relationship. It felt gross and unnecessary. Why do studios think we need a romance in every single plot? It's like they have a checklist. Okay, we have the history, we have the drama. Where's the kissing? We need at least 3 scenes of yearning glances, or the audience will fall asleep.
It's the 4-quadrant marketing strategy corn. They think if they don't have a love story, they'll lose a certain demographic. But what is fascinating about Legacy of Ashes is the production history. There were reports that the initial test screenings were so bad that the studio literally ordered a complete re-edit to try and turn it into more of an action drama rather than a prestige drama. They misread the audience so badly. They thought people wanted more explosions in their historical period piece when people actually just wanted a reason to care about the characters again.
But if they re-edited it for action, did the action at least deliver? Was there a fun factor tucked away in there? I mean, sometimes a bad drama can become a decent action flick if the stunts are good.
No, because the action wasn't choreographed for the original script. So you have these awkward, jarring cuts where a character is standing in a library, and then suddenly they're in the middle of a burning village with no explanation of how they got there. It feels like a fever dream. There's one sequence where the protagonist is giving a speech about the importance of the law, and then, I kid you not, the building explodes and he's suddenly wielding a saber like he's in an Errol Flynn movie. It's tonal whiplash at its finest. And because they were trying to save money on the reshoots, most of the explosions are very poor CGI that looks like it belongs in a video game from 2010.
It is that typical studio move where they think they can fix a bad story with more post-production. They ended up with a Frankenstein's monster of a film. The pacing is schizophrenic. You will have 10 minutes of dense, boring political dialogue, followed by a 20-minute battle scene that has zero emotional weight, because we don't know why these people are fighting. It's like the movie is constantly shouting at you to be impressed, while giving you absolutely nothing to be impressed by.
It is also a case study in how to waste a talented cast. They brought back the lead from the first film, who clearly looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You can see the "I am just here for the paycheck" look in his eyes in every scene. It is heartbreaking because the first film actually had some merit. Legacy of Ashes just drags that legacy through the mud. There's a moment where he has to deliver a line about the ashes of our ancestors, and you can almost see him counting the zeros on his check in his head.
Do you think the actors knew while they were filming? Can you see the moment they give up? Is there a specific scene where the light just leaves their eyes?
Oh, absolutely. There's a scene near the end, a big emotional monologue where the lead actor actually sighs before he starts his lines. Not a character sigh, but a how many more takes of this nonsense sigh. He's standing in the rain, supposed to be mourning his fallen comrades, and he just looks annoyed, like he's waiting for a bus that's 20 minutes late. It's painful. Legacy of Ashes is a very fitting title, because that is all that is left of the franchise. It is number 4 because it is a cynical cash grab that failed to even grab the cash. It was a massive tax write-off disguised as a movie.
It's the kind of movie that makes you want to apologize to the historical figures it's loosely based on. Sorry you had to be part of this algorithm-driven nightmare. All right, moving up the scale of badness to number 3. This is where we get into the ambition exceeds ability category, 2022's Quantum Paradox.
Oh, the smart movie for people who want to feel smart but don't actually want to think. This is the one that people pretend to like at dinner parties because they don't want to admit they didn't understand it.
This was a passion project for the director. $120 million budget. It sits at a 3.5 on IMDb and an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. You can find this one on HBO Max or Vudu.
Quantum Paradox tried to be the next Interstellar or Tenet. It marketed itself on being scientifically accurate. They even hired consultants. But if you actually listen to the dialogue, it is absolute gibberish. They use terms like quantum entanglement and event horizon as if they are magic spells. It's like they read the Wikipedia page for physics and just highlighted the longest words they could find. I remember one scene where the lead scientist explains that they need to reverse the polarity of the dark matter stream to save the day. That is literally a line from Doctor Who in the 70s, but they delivered it with the gravity of a funeral.
But weren't the consultants supposed to prevent that? How does a movie with $120 million fail at basic terminology? You'd think at least one person on set would say, hey, that's not how gravity works.
That's the thing. The consultants usually provide a grounded framework, but then the screenwriters Hollywoodize it. In Quantum Paradox, they decided that science wasn't cinematic enough, so they invented this concept of temporal bleeding, which is essentially just a way to have the actors teleport whenever the plot gets stuck. As someone who loves a good, hard sci-fi paper, this movie was physically painful. There is a scene where a scientist explains that they can travel through time because they polarize the gravitons in a non-Euclidean manifold. That is not physics, Corn. That is a word salad. It is the cinematic equivalent of a high schooler using a thesaurus on every word of an essay to sound sophisticated.
And the plot. It tries to be so non-linear and complex that it becomes completely incomprehensible. I remember watching it and thinking I had missed a scene, so I rewound it. No, I hadn't missed anything. The movie just skipped a massive piece of character motivation because it was too busy showing us slow-motion shots of dust motes in a lab. It's like the editor just threw the scenes in a blender and hoped for the best. One minute they're in a space station. The next, they're in a middle school playground in the 1990s, and there is zero connective tissue.
It's the Christopher Nolan effect without the Christopher Nolan talent. Nolan uses non-linear structures to reveal information in a way that builds tension. Quantum Paradox uses it to hide the fact that the story makes no sense. If you played this movie in chronological order, it would be about 15 minutes long and consist mostly of people looking at screens and saying, "My God." There's a recurring motif of a spinning top, clearly a nod to Inception, but here it's a spinning fidget spinner. I'm serious. A fidget spinner is the key to the multiverse in this movie.
The production story is the real tragedy here. The director had a vision, but the studio got scared halfway through and forced last-minute reshoots to add a villain. So you have this philosophical meditation on time, suddenly interrupted by a guy in a suit with a gun who wants to control the timeline. It is two different movies fighting each other, and both of them are losing. It's like watching a documentary about bees that suddenly turns into a John Wick clone for the final 20 minutes.
I actually read an interview where the director said the gunman was a metaphor for the entropy of the universe. No, he wasn't. He was a guy in a suit who needed a paycheck. It is the ultimate pseudo-intellectual failure. It treats the audience like they're too dumb to understand the science, while the movie itself doesn't understand the science. It is number 3 because it is genuinely frustrating. At least the others were just boring or cynical. This one insults your intelligence. It's the kid in class who tells you he's a genius but can't do long division.
It really does. It's like being lectured by someone who thinks the earth is flat but uses very expensive PowerPoint slides. And that brings us to the runner-up, the Silver Medal of Cinematic Shame, 2025's Midnight Protocol.
I remember the hype for this. An A-list cast, a cyberpunk aesthetic, a massive marketing campaign. They had tie-in energy drinks, for heaven's sake. They had a Midnight Protocol burger at a major fast food chain. And then it came out.
3.2 on IMDb, 5% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is an Amazon Prime Video exclusive. They spent $90 million on this, and I honestly don't know where the money went. It certainly didn't go into the lighting, because I couldn't see half of what was happening on screen.
It certainly didn't go to the script. Midnight Protocol is the definition of style over substance. It looks like a high-end perfume commercial that goes on for 2.5 hours. The plot involves a data heist in a futuristic city, but the stakes are never explained. Why do we care about this data? Why is the protagonist risking their life for a glowing USB stick? The movie never tells us. It just assumes that because it's cyberpunk, we'll automatically care about a heist. There's a scene where they spend 5 minutes explaining the encryption on the drive, but they never explain what's on the drive. Is it the coordinates to a new world? Is it a recipe for a really good sourdough? We never find out.
But wait, didn't they have that huge sequence in the middle? The one where they dive into the mainframe? That was the big selling point in the trailers, the visual revolution of the digital world.
Oh, the digital odyssey scene. It was 10 minutes of the main character floating through a neon tunnel while numbers flew past his face. It was supposed to be a visual representation of hacking, but it looked like a screensaver from 1999. What really bothered me about Midnight Protocol was the acting. You have Oscar winners in this movie, people who have delivered legendary performances, and they are directed to act like caricatures. The villain is doing this weird whispery voice that makes him sound like he has a permanent sore throat. The hero is just Angry Man number 1. There is no nuance, no humanity. It's like they were told to act like they were made of plastic to match the aesthetic.
And the CGI, Herman. You mentioned the $90 million budget. There are scenes in this movie, specifically the virtual reality sequences, that look like they were rendered on a PlayStation 3. It is 2026. We know what good CGI looks like. How do you spend that much money and end up with unfinished looking textures and janky animations? I saw a shot where a character's hand clipped through a digital table in a $90 million movie. That's just lazy.
I suspect a lot of that money went to the A-list cast and the marketing. By the time they got to the actual post-production, they were probably running on fumes. It feels like a movie made by an algorithm that was fed popular cyberpunk tropes, but didn't understand how to connect them. You have the neon lights, the rain, the trench coats, the hackers, but it is all just wallpaper. There is nothing behind it. It is a hollow exercise in branding. It's like a cyberpunk starter pack expanded into a feature film.
It's like a theme park ride where the animatronics are broken and the speakers are blown. It is number 2 because it had every advantage: money, talent, a popular genre, and it still managed to be an absolute disaster. It is a movie that makes you feel nothing. No excitement, no sadness, just a profound sense of, when will this be over? It's 90 minutes of neon-soaked nothingness.
It's the cinematic equivalent of eating a giant bowl of unflavored gelatin. It's a lot of volume but zero nutrition, and that brings us to the bottom of the pit. The number 1 worst serious movie of the last 5 years. A film so pretentious, so incoherent, and so expensive that it almost feels like a prank. 2026's The Eternal Return.
I saw this at a festival screening early this year, and I have never seen a room turn on a movie so fast. People were literally walking out by the 40-minute mark, and this is a 3-hour film. By the end, there were maybe 12 people left in a theater that seats 500. It was like a ghost town.
It is currently sitting at a 2.9 on IMDb and a staggering 3% on Rotten Tomatoes. It had a $150 million budget. It is currently in theatrical limbo, meaning the studio is so embarrassed by it they are barely promoting it, but it is slated to hit Disney Plus in May. $150 million. You could fund 30 incredible indie movies with that. Instead, we got 3 hours of a man looking at a wall.
The Eternal Return is a philosophical drama from an auteur-director who was given unlimited budget and zero oversight. It is a 3-hour movie. For the first 45 minutes, basically nothing happens. It is just shots of a man walking through a desert intercut with close-ups of an eye, and not even a particularly interesting eye. Just an eye. Is it the eye of God? The eye of the universe? No, it's just the lead actor's left eye, blinking occasionally.
The director claimed it was a meditation on the nature of existence, but it is really just a meditation on his own ego. There is a 20-minute uncut take of 2 characters eating a meal in complete silence. No dialogue, no music, just the sound of silverware on plates. People in the theater were literally shouting at the screen to get on with it. It wasn't artistic silence, it was just silence. It's the kind of scene that makes you wonder if the projector has frozen, but then you see a character move their fork by a millimeter and you realize, no, this is just the movie now.
But what about the return part of the title? Is there some sort of reincarnation plot or a time loop that justifies the length? Usually, these high-concept films have some sort of payoff where all the weirdness comes together.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But no. The return refers to a character returning to his childhood home, which happens in the last 10 minutes of the film. Everything before that is just atmospheric filler. It attempts to be deep by being vague. Every time a character speaks, it is in riddles. The sun is the shadow of the soul, or we are all just echoes in a room with no walls. It sounds like something a freshman philosophy student would write after their first beer. It is pseudo-intellectual pretension at its absolute worst. It's not profound, it's just grammatically correct nonsense.
I remember one scene where a woman stares at a tree for 5 minutes while a voiceover recites poetry in a language that isn't even real. It was invented for the movie. Why? Why invent a language for a 3-line poem about a tree? It felt like the director was just showing off that he had the budget to hire a linguist.
Because it's transformative, Corn, at least that's what the press kit said, and the narrative incoherence is staggering. The movie jumps between 3 different time periods: ancient Rome, the present day, and a distant future. But it never bothers to explain how they are linked, you just have to guess. By the 3rd hour, you realize there is no link. It was just a stylistic choice to hide the fact that there is no actual story being told. It's the ultimate, the emperor has no clothes scenario. The ancient Rome scenes look like they were filmed in a backyard with bed sheets, despite the budget. It's baffling.
It is number one because it is the most egregious example of the utter trap. When you give a director that much money and no one is allowed to say no or this doesn't make sense, you end up with The Eternal Return. It is a $150 million vanity project that is completely inaccessible to anyone who isn't the director himself. It's not just a bad movie, it's an act of hostility toward the audience. It feels like the movie is daring you to hate it, and then calling you uncultured when you do.
It is a fascinating failure, though. To fail that spectacularly takes effort. You have to actively avoid making sense for 3 hours. Most people would accidentally stumble into a plot point by mistake, but this director managed to dodge every single one. It's like a masterclass in how to spend a fortune and leave no impact other than frustration. It's the black hole of cinema. It consumes time, money, and light, and gives nothing back.
So, looking back at these 5 disasters, what are the patterns? What can we learn from this pile of cinematic rubble? Is there a common thread besides just being bad? It seems like pretense is the biggest culprit.
The biggest takeaway for me is that budget is not a substitute for a coherent vision. In almost every one of these cases, from The Last Sentinel to The Eternal Return, there was a fundamental breakdown in storytelling. Whether it was studio interference, sequel desperation, or an unchecked auteur, the why of the story got lost. They all focused on the how. How many effects can we add? How many stars can we hire? How many deep? Metaphors can we cram in? But they forgot to ask why anyone should care. If you don't have a human heart at the center of your story, no amount of $80 million CGI is going to save you.
And for the listeners, I think the actionable insight here is, watch the sincerity threshold. When a movie tries too hard to tell you how important or smart it is in the trailer, that is usually a red flag. If they are leaning on atmosphere and deep quotes rather than character and plot, proceed with caution. If a trailer uses a slowed-down, haunting cover of a pop song, you're probably in for a rough time. That's the industry shorthand for, we have no plot. But look at this vibe.
That is the universal warning sign of a serious flop. It's the sad piano rule. If the trailer is 90% slow motion walking and 10% sad piano, save your money. We want to hear from you too. What did we miss? Was there a movie that promised you the world and delivered a paper bag? Maybe a historical epic that forgot the history, or a thriller that forgot to be thrilling. Reach out to us at show@myweirdprompts.com or find us on Telegram. We might even do a follow-up episode based on your suggestions. I'm sure there are plenty of other disasters we haven't even touched on yet.
This has been the first entry in the countdown. Next time, we are going to flip the script and look at the 5 best movies of the same period. The ones that actually lived up to the hype and prove that serious doesn't have to mean unwatchable. We'll be looking at films that manage to be both ambitious and deeply human. We're going from the darkness into the light, looking at the movies that remind us why we love cinema in the first place.
Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping us on track and making sure we didn't spend 3 hours talking about The Eternal Return. He's the one who had to watch the clips for the show notes, so send him some sympathy. And a huge thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you are enjoying the show, leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps people find our weird little corner of the internet, and keeps us motivated to keep digging through the trash to find these cinematic gems, or in today's case, cinematic lead. Your reviews help us stay afloat in the sea of mediocre content.
We will see you next time for something a bit more uplifting. We promise no 3-minute stares at rusted bolts.
Take it easy. Keep your eyes on the screen and your hand off the rewind button, unless it's so bad you have to see it twice. Actually, no, don't do that. See you next time. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash. Text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the flows from sloth.